One thing that you need to know about Hannah is that she is seriously the cutest girl you will ever meet. Have you seen her glasses? Oh my gosh, I love them. And her hair, so cute.
Something you need to know about Hannah Wrubel is that she is half toddler, half grandma, trapped inside of a high school girl's body.
One thing that you have to know about Hannah Wrubel is that when she grows up, she wants to marry a cowboy.
Give it up for Hannah Wrubel.
Give it up for Hanny Wrubel.
Give it up for the Hannah Wrubel.
Alrighty, what's up guys? I'm Hannah, I'm a senior at Eisenhower High School, and it's true, I do want to marry a cowboy. Okay, so I'm just going to jump right in. I want to start by reading you guys a quote that changed my life. It totally changed my perspective on things. It's like a super powerful and beautiful quote. I think it should be up on the screen soon. But it says that someone to live within the sound of a church or chapel bell. I want to run a rescue shop within a yard of hell. I love this quote. I think it's so beautiful. It's really true of my life. And so if you knew me before Jesus, you would know that I loved to party. I loved to drink and get drunk with my friends and go out to parties. And so when I came to Jesus and I was saved, I was super excited. Like I wanted to tell everyone. I wanted to let everyone know that like Jesus doesn't only love me, like he loves everyone. Like it was the best news ever. And so I started inviting like all my friends to Edge, to church. I was so excited. I wanted everyone to know of like this crazy love that Jesus has for us, and no one came. So this was a season of my life where I was exhausted, I felt like. I just kept inviting my friends. No one came. No one really just wanted like anything to do with it. And that was just it. Like they just didn't want anything to do with it. And so my excitement quickly switched to frustration. I was upset. I was angry. I was confused. Mainly because I knew these people like my whole life, and they saw how much I changed and saw how like this crazy like partier girl can like turn to like love the Lord, and like filled with so much love and compassion, and they just wanted like nothing to do with it. And so this went on for like a few months of me just being like frustrated and annoyed. And then there was a night at Edge where I was just like sobbing. I was just sitting in a pew at like the old Friendship Church, and I was bawling my eyes out because none of my friends were there. And I was like, I don't know why. Like I keep trying and I keep trying, and like they don't want anything to do with this. And so soon after that night, Jesus quickly like flipped my frustration and just like called me to love them, and called me to just like love them even more. And I knew that like they didn't need my love, like they needed his love, and that would come from me. And so something that I was like always telling myself like for months in my head is like love like him to lead them to him, love like them to lead them to him. And it's still like true to this day. Like I say that probably 100 times a day. And so I'm actually just going to jump into some scripture right away. This comes from Matthew 5. I think it will be up there. And it says, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes the sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even Gentiles do the same?" And I love that. I think it's one of the most beautiful passages in all of the Bible, because I think it's so true to our lives today. Like, how easy is it to love someone who's like kind to us? And how easy is it for us to be kind to people who are like kind back to us? Like that's a natural reaction. That's something that like is normal. And so what I realize is that kind people are normally the people who don't need the most love. You know, like someone who naturally is kind are probably the people that like don't need it. It's probably like your rude coworker, or like someone like me, like a rebellious teenager who just like needs Jesus' love and was like flipped in an instant. And like I said, like they don't need your love necessarily, they need Jesus' love, but that like comes from you. And so one of the biggest things I learned through this is that we become compassionate like Jesus when we begin to focus on the heart of others rather than their behavior, right? So like we focus on their heart rather than what they're doing. So if someone does me wrong or I feel as though they've hurt me, I'm going to start focusing on not focusing on what they did, like the literal action of like how they hurt me, but like why did they do that? Like how is their heart? Like what can I do to help them? And so it no longer becomes about like me and my hurt, but like how to love them through their pain. And so as I was like going on this journey with Jesus, I knew that that was something that I needed to do. But I was like, how do I do this? Like, I know I need to love them, but it was hard for me because I didn't know how. And so this is like the absolute biggest thing I've learned is just like how to love people, and that's like what it's all about. Like I think that this is like the biggest thing you could learn. And so tonight, I want to leave you with my last words of like the 3 most impactful ways that I learned to love like Jesus. And so number 1 would be like love God and love people at the same time. There's like many passages in the Bible that talk about like loving your neighbor and loving God, but like it has to be at the same time. And so this comes from 1 John 4:20 to 4:21. And it reads, if anyone says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from him, whoever loves God must also love his brother. And so I think a lot of this, like I said in the beginning, comes from overflow. Like in the beginning, like I mentioned, I was so overwhelmed with Jesus' love. It was almost like I had too much to myself. Like I couldn't keep it all. Like I had to tell people. And I think that's like such a beautiful thing that Jesus has planted in all of us. Like we all have his love, and like we don't need to earn it. Like it's not something that we need to earn. And so if you feel as though you don't have like enough to share, it's not that you need to like earn it. It's probably that you just need to like tune into it and like recognize it. Something else is that love is not something that like God chooses to do. Like he doesn't look down at us and say like, okay, I choose to love you and I choose to love you, and maybe I'll love you like a little less and you a little less. Like he doesn't choose. It's like the pure essence of who he is. Like God just is love. And so what would it look like if us as followers of him were like that? Like if we could no longer, or if we would no longer just look at someone and like think, I need to love them, but it was just like what we did. Like it became natural. I think that would be like such a beautiful thing. So moving on to my second point, comes from 1 John 4 also. This is verse 18. It says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. For fear has to do with punishment, and whoever has fear has not been perfected in love. So I think we hear this a lot, just like have no fear. Because his love like fights fear, and it destroys fear, it damages fear. Like there can't be fear in his love, like that passage said. Like whoever fears has not been perfected in love. And so something I've learned through this, because I had a lot of fear through my story. Like I knew I had to love them, but I was scared because I didn't know how, or I didn't know how they would react, or I didn't know what they would say, or like what kind of questions they would ask. And so something I've learned is like, if God is calling you to do something, like the God of the universe, like he knows all your thoughts, he knows all their thoughts, he knows how they're going to react, he knows the future. Like what's the worst that could happen? Like if he is calling you to do it, then like he's not going to call you to do something that's going to hurt you. Like it's going to be used for his glory to impact the kingdom. And so like that act of obedience with him will just like like have you grow closer with him. Also is that like those little acts of obedience that you don't want to do, like I think we can all attest to that. Like we always feel like God, not always, but sometimes, like God's calling you to do something, you don't want to do it. You're like, God, like I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. But like God doesn't call us like to be comfortable. Like he calls us to go out of our comfort zone. And so having no fear would like let us do that and like lead a passage to do that. So definitely getting out of my comfort zone was like the quickest way that I grew with the Father. And so point number 3 is just serving. I feel like serving can kind of be an intimidating word, especially with like that move out conference that we had and like that night at Edge, where it was all kind of about serving and like how to get plugged in. I feel like it can be intimidating and you're like, I don't know how, or like I don't know like what that means. So just like simple examples, just like doing the dishes for your parents, or like doing the chores, or like just like being kind to them. Because leading people to Jesus isn't always like, would you like to hear about my Lord and Savior? Like it can be just like loving them. And it's like loving them humbly and like serving them humbly. So like you're not doing it for a reward. Like your reward is that they get to know Jesus, and like that should be enough. And so something else I've learned about serving is that like they will ask. Like if like people have even like said to me like, how did you like move on from like this crazy partier to like being like on your knees serving me? And so that like also ties in with the fears that like you don't have to worry about like if they're gonna ask or if they're gonna want it. Like if they want it, then like they will ask, and then that's when like the Holy Spirit, like you just kind of let him have his way and just like what you need to say will just like flow out. And so when I was like going to Jesus, asking him like, what do I want to talk about tonight, because there's like so much that he's taught me through my time at Edge, I just kept coming back to this, and I think that it's because like this is what it's all about. Like if I could have like one word to like the underclassmen, it's like this is it. Like nothing else matters except for like loving people. Like that's the gospel. And so don't complicate it. I think even as I was like driving, thinking about it, not thinking about what I was gonna say, but just like thinking about like the points and stuff and how like I can still do that in my own life, I was like, it's so easy. Like love God. Like it's not like, I think we overcomplicate it so much, and I definitely did. Like that whole season of my life, I was just like, how do I do this? And it's like the most simple thing. It's just like love God, and it'll come from overflow. And so my last words, like for you underclassmen, is just like go and love and serve. And if you feel that like the Lord is calling you to go, then do it, because it was probably the best thing that I've ever done. So thank you. It's been an honor. I love you guys.
I love you. That was so good. I'm so proud of you. It's man, it's so cool like getting to work with each of our seniors through this whole process. But what I was thinking about with Hannah today, I was in the chapel earlier praying for tonight, praying for these guys, and what I thought of is that quote that you read at the beginning by C.T. Studd actually was a quote that was used to really inspire Steve Andrews before they founded Kensington. And so when I think of our mission statement, to see everyone transformed and mobilized, and you think of who's the one, right? In that parable where Jesus is talking about the one lost sheep, and he leaves the 99, he goes after the one. Like that is your life, is that you were the one, and he chased you down through a group of friends who invited you to Edge. And then like the whole point is like we want to see everyone transformed, so that happened, and then mobilized, and now you're doing the exact same thing, that your heart became to go after the one, to love them like Jesus did. And like I don't know, I just was overwhelmed sitting in the chapel thinking about like you embody what Steve and those guys when they started this place wanted, and here you are years later reading a quote that inspired them to start this church, and now you're sending these underclassmen out with your last words saying the exact same exact same things that started this place. So I'm proud of you, kiddo. I love you. You the bomb. Yes, and if there's any cowboys, let her know. Just kidding. But hey, we're going to keep moving. Next up, we got the Riley Herman. But before that,